This is the best viewpoint to the Temple Mount, and 2000 years ago it was the best viewpoint to the temple itself. When Jesus arrives here and sees the beautiful view over to the temple, he cries, while giving a horrible prediction for the future of the entire city. A prediction that less than 40 years later would become a reality. My name is Itay, I am a tour guide here in Israel, and today I want to take you inside the church of Dominus Flevit, the place called the Lord Wept. Stay to the end and explore what might be the tombs of some of the first Christians that were living here in Jerusalem. The Gospels tell us that Jesus rode down from Bethphage down the Mount of Olives. He approached Jerusalem, saw the city spreading before him, and yet he wept. Luke records his words. If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but how is it hidden from your eyes? The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. Let's try to understand why did Jesus cry when he gives this prediction. Jesus was a Jew growing up in the Galilee, coming to Jerusalem ever since he was a child. His story is very similar to all Jews at the time that came regularly in the 3 pilgrimage holidays to Jerusalem to worship, to pray, to meet with other communities. It was for him a very beloved place, and for him to speak about the destruction was a very sad moment. The first church commemorating this event was built here during the 5th century and was destroyed by the Persian invaders in 614. From that church we have a beautiful mosaic that survived. The next church was built by the Crusaders in the 12th century and was relatively small. We can even see the base of the altar and some mosaics that were left from that church. Then came modern times. The Ottoman Empire, which ruled this land from 1516 and until the First World War, generally restricted the building of new churches and synagogues. But by the 19th century, the empire was in decline, heavily in debt, and was dependent on the support of the European powers. That opened the way for greater Jerusalem influence with consulates, pilgrim hostels, and eventually new churches. The most famous moment came in 1898, when Kaiser Wilhelm II, the Kaiser of Germany, visited Jerusalem. He attended the inauguration of the Lutheran Church of the Redeemer, the first major Protestant church built inside the Old City, and his visit paved the way for many more European religion and national projects across the city in the following decades. The modern church was built here in 1950 and was designed by Antonio Berluzzi, the home architect of the Catholic Church in the Holy Land. He really tried to show the idea of the event that took place here in this place. So let's look at the building. If you look at the shape of the dome, the church is built like a teardrop. Its roof is rounded and flowing downwards. At the 4 corners, there are shapes of vessels called unguanetaria. What are they? In the excavations that took place here, archaeologists found dozens of small glass and clay flasks. They're often called tear bottles, because tradition says that mourners would collect their tears inside of them and then bury the tear vessels with the deceased people to show the care and love that they had for them. But in reality they were more likely filled with perfume oils that were used during the burial. When you go inside, you can see at the front of the church, right behind the altar, a beautiful window with the shape of the cross, the wine and the bread from communion, of course, framing Jerusalem perfectly. You can see the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount, and the entire city spreading underneath your feet just through that window. Just underneath the window you can see the beautiful altar, and on it you can see a beautiful mosaic portraying the known saying of Jesus, like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. Traditionally, Catholic churches are built facing east, towards the rising sun, which is a symbol for Jesus as the light of the world. Dominus Flevit is different. The architect designed it in this way so that worshippers would pray here while looking towards Jerusalem, just like Jesus did when he was here in this place. Near the entrance we can see some of the burial coffins of the old cemetery that were found here, with tombs that are dating back all the way to the 2nd and 1st centuries BC and into the times of the Second Temple. But aren't Jews buried in coffins or shrouds? Jewish burial customs changed throughout the ages. In the first temple period, families buried their dead in caves. After about a year, when the flesh had decomposed, the bones were gathered into a central pit where you with all of your ancestors would be together. And that is the meaning of the biblical phrase, "and he was gathered to his fathers." It was actually a physical thing when you or any other person would be gathered and all your bones would be put together in a pit with all of your ancestors. But then in the late Second Temple period, the practice had changed. Jews of Jerusalem began using small limestone coffins called ossuaries or gluskemaot. Instead of mixing the bones into a communal pile, each person's remains were now placed in their own box, their own ossuary, often with their name inscribed, reflecting a growing belief in the individual resurrection. To put it in a funny way, you don't want to be resurrected and find out that you have the arm of your grandma and the leg of your grandson. So instead of putting the bones in the big pit, everybody together, they started separating them after the 1 year of letting the flesh decompose and putting each person in a separated box that was just big enough for the bones of one person. After the destruction of the temple in the year of 70 and the Bar Kokhba revolt from 132 to 135, this practice disappeared because Jews were worried because of so many wars were going on that people thought maybe there won't be anyone there to complete my burial after a year, and then they started burying the body as is in the ground, covered with shroud, and this tradition is how it is done until today. By the way, today in Israel, due to the lack of burial grounds, because the country is relatively small after all, and they started building in floors, there are some who want to get back to what they call the land of Israel burial, burying the body, leaving it for a year, and after a year collecting the bones, putting it in a small vessel, and then you don't need much space for storing it. Whether it will catch or not, it's hard for people to change traditions, and that's why if it will happen, it will take time. So what do we know about the people that were buried here in this place during the Second Temple period? Scribes on the gluskemaot in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek reveals their names: Yosef, Miriam, Shimon, common Jewish names that we know from the New Testament. Those Jews from the middle class of Jerusalem, from the Jesus era, from the Second Temple period, some of them might have met with him in person. According to later traditions, these were some of the first followers of Jesus, some of the first Christians that were living here in Jerusalem, but this is something that archaeologists and historians cannot verify. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe to join me for more stories from the Holy Land. I am Itay, I wish you a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the next video.